kind of an introduction and essentially, what is my primary function in my new role at Real Salt Lake? Is that correct?
Yep, exactly.
Okay. Okay, good guess. Look, I think it's an interesting question, and I've been in this role as assistant GM for almost 3 years now. It'll be 3 years in the late fall, and I think how I define that, how I answer that question is certainly changed over the course of the time that I've been in this position. In essence, I think the obvious one is to support Elliot Fall. Elliot was hired as general manager right before I came aboard, and I feel very privileged and very fortunate that he selected me to be his assistant GM. We know how sports operate and are, and Elliot's going to only get one opportunity to be a GM for Real Salt Lake, and so the trust that he placed in me, in hiring me for this role is certainly appreciated on my part. But to get down into the function of what I do on a day to day, I would say that 30% of my time is probably spent with the professional teams, and that is again assisting Elliot and Kurt Schmidt, our technical director, and collaborating on all the decisions, both roster wise and management wise, in handling the matters for our professional teams in Real Salt Lake and Real Monarchs, and the rest and the major portion of it is in our academy, and our academy is a robust endeavor. And that's very much made obvious by the fact that we have our players, our U15 and U17 players, on the ground living at our training facility in Harriman 10 months out of the year. And so everything that encompasses that from a lifestyle standpoint, from an educational standpoint, and then of course a footballing standpoint, all flows up through me. And so that is a huge endeavor, a huge part of my endeavors, but certainly a lot of fun. The academy is a lot of fun, and I feel privileged to be associated with it, and of course, associated with Real Salt Lake in the position that I'm in.
Wondering, since with like the most recent news in the league, Toronto just announced that they acquired, I forgot his name already, but they just acquired an Italian player. Bernardeschi. He was just wondering what your reaction to that and what Bill Manning is doing up there in Toronto, and with the market looking like it's just in like a really, really hot spot right now.
Of course. Yeah, no, the Bill is a former executive of our club and was for many years, certainly during a period when Real Salt Lake was held at high esteem. And I think, it's been interesting watching from afar on everything Toronto has been doing and is currently doing. And, I think it's in a sense a very foreign landscape to me, because, our two clubs operate in such a different capacity. They are certainly more, I don't know if aggressive is the right word, but look, their market, the footballers they're looking for is a little bit different than the way we're trying to build our roster. And I think that's highlighted most of all in the fact that, look, we're a development club. And we have a very established, a very high level academy that has historically continued to produce players, befitting our first team. Currently on the first team roster, I believe we have 15 players that formerly came from our academy. And Toronto is again built in a different manner. They're a town similar to LA and the New Yorks that are looking for these high profile players to come in and not only make an impact on the field, but make an impact in the marketing media side of everything that encompasses our sport. So I'll be honest, I don't particularly pay too much attention to what they're doing outside of generally observing. I think they are making a lot of aggressive moves and certainly using all the strength of the resources at their disposal to counter what has been a difficult start to the season for them. And I think it's a testament to the ambitions of their ownership group and the fact that they want to win, and they want to win at all costs. Again, a different style, a different approach to what we're doing here in Real Salt Lake, and what we've done historically, but to each their own.
So I guess his follow-up was more about do you see like the Bernardeschi signing as maybe something of a paradigm shift, where this player could have signed for any team in Europe that he wanted? He's at in his late 20s, so in a prime age to keep playing at a high level in Europe, but he chose Toronto. Do you see this as kind of a shift in the market in a way, or is this something that maybe has been coming for a while?
I think that would probably be my sentiment. Look, I think can you put a flag in the ground and say this signing this day, changes the course of kind of the way MLS acquisitions, foreign acquisitions are going? I don't know, but I think it's a very pivotal moment in the recent trend, and that is, it's MLS has gotten very much away from the age of signing, great names, older established names that are towards the end of their career. And now being on the other side of this, on the other side of the lines, I'm able to kind of have a glimpse into just how many inquiries from abroad from those types of players are put into MLS teams. Because a lot of people, a lot of players globally are very attracted in coming to live in the United States and play in MLS. But I think MLS has done a very good job of directing its teams in the league in a direction where now we're a younger, more exciting, more developing league. And I think this signing, certainly for Toronto, is a resounding moment in that direction. And I think it's a great moment to reinforce what makes MLS exciting, or one of the components that makes MLS very exciting is that a player, an Italian national team player, in his prime, who can have his choice of the top clubs in Europe, chooses willingly to come to our league and to play for Toronto FC. And I think that's something that Toronto fans certainly should be excited about. And I think that's something that MLS fans certainly should be excited about as well, because it's, again, a continuation of a recent trend, and only is going to reinforce that theme for the league in the long run. Yeah, so just to make sure, just kind of asking for clarification on Everton and Johnny, and their situations, their recent departures with the club. Yeah, look, I think I'll speak about Everton first. Everton is a former teammate of mine. It was a privilege to share the field with him, and look, he is and always will be an absolute warrior. His personality certainly always shines when he's on the field, and I think that's something I'll certainly miss, but obviously something that is our partner club, a club within our global ecosystem, Bevran's gain. And I wish Everton all the best in his next endeavor, and I think he's going to be very successful there at that club, and hopefully help them in the promotion battle there throughout the course of the rest of their season. And with Johnny's departure as well, again, I think it's a good opportunity for him to find what players desire, and that's more consistent playing time. And for a number of reasons, that hasn't been the reality for him here recently, through respective decisions and obviously injuries and just the general cadence of the year. But Johnny is a very, very talented attacking footballer, and I'm sure he's going to find all the success that he deserves here in this next endeavor. These are, of course, the natural, evolutions of rosters and natural decisions that clubs have to make. And so in these two, in moving on from Everton and Johnny, of course, we open up 2 roster spots on the first team roster, and also 2 international spots. And of course, the front office is always looking at things from all angles and trying to determine the best way to move our roster forward in the greater interests of the footballing pursuits of Real Salt Lake.
So specifically with Everton's transfer,
lo explicó ya él, ahora.
Yeah, you mentioned a little bit, but Everton's transfer was underneath the Blitzer umbrella, going to SK Bevran. When you guys were looking at that transfer, was it, I guess, in a way, an easier option that you saw to work with a club within the Blitzer umbrella for this, or was it similar to a lot of other things, other conversations that you guys have with other clubs when either they come knocking looking for a player, or when you guys are looking to sell? Yeah,
it's a really important and really interesting question. And of course, to clarify, Everton's is a transfer, and Johnny's respectively is a loan. I think we're still in the beginning stages of realizing the potential of now being in this global ecosystem of clubs that that all have ownership connections to Mr. David Blitzer. And, as we establish these lines of dialogue, these relationships, I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity, as now we're seeing in this instance, for collaboration, and for kind of the rising tide raising all boats. And so yes, look, when talking about kind of the situation of our roster and the opportunity for Everton, this conversation happened very naturally in the sense that Beltran again is looking in their season to make an aggressive moves in order to potentially fight for promotion. And again, I think it was an opportunity. You have to look at this from the standpoint of if it's a win-win for both sides. And if it's something that makes sense for both sides, then of course I think it's going to be the opportune decision to have it be within our network of clubs to continue again, raise that tide rather than to go outside, to a club that we don't have a direct association with. It just makes more logical sense. I'm happy that it worked out in this instance, because, of course, we know that Everton is going to be taken care of and it's going to be the right opportunity for him. But I think we're still just scratching the surface on kind of how best to operate, again, within this larger ecosystem. Yeah, and I just want to make sure I get the question right. It's the current situation of David Ochoa and the club and the front office's position on kind of the future of David Ochoa. Is that correct?
Yeah, and also adding in the fact that he posted on Instagram about 45 minutes to an hour ago about his status as an RSL player and still being a player but not being allowed to train with the team.
I see. Unfortunately, I'm not on social media, and so I haven't been updated to that.
Smart idea, maybe. Smart idea.
Yeah, it saves me a lot.
Depend.
Yeah. Look, I think the appropriate way for me to comment on this is, again, because I don't have all the information, is in the respect of formerly playing with David. And, we didn't play together for many years, but, I did have the privilege of sharing the locker room with him. And look, I think with very young, talented players, development is not always a linear line. And it's not always going to be one foot in front of the other. And so, look, David hasn't consistently found playing time this year, but again, David is a very talented young man. And so, speaking on as a former teammate, I have no doubt if he, puts his head down and works hard, then he's going to have a fantastic footballing career, and because he, again, is very talented and deserves to. So that's all I'm going to comment on that right now. So a follow-up question about the training situation.
Yeah, specifically just like about the training situation.
Yeah, again, I don't think it's my position, to comment on it right now. I think there's certainly other individuals in the club that are more appropriate to answer that question. So, I apologize, but that's not a question that I just feel comfortable answering at this moment.
Are you guys, it's about David Ochoa. I know you can comment a lot of it, but are you guys planning on maybe negotiating him on a new contract, or maybe letting on more, or is he planning like to move in on somewhere else? That's kind of where a lot of us don't understand. I'm just kind of want to understand what the situation is. And if you can comment, that's fine.
Yeah, sure. So look, I think it would be, I'm going to answer in a generality. I think, with any player on any professional roster, I think it's foolish to close the door on any situation or any player at any time, because again, information and soccer, football is changing so rapidly, and the conversation today is going to be a different conversation next week. I mean, I say it every year, but there's always one player on the first team roster who surprises you by the end of the year, and there's one player each year who has worked and played their way into a more pivotal position on the roster than the start of the year. So again, I don't think it's fair to definitively say one thing or the other. I think it's always important to, to be open-minded and to continually have conversations as the season develops.
With the teams under the David Blitzer umbrella, do you guys have a list of players that are maybe an opportunity for a loan or a cheaper transfer? Is that an option between all those teams? Like you have those players available and on a list, or it just happens?
Yeah, no, I think it's so again, I think we're still, in the phase of kind of figuring this all out, but the efficacy of it is improving every day. And so, look, Kurt Schmidt, our technical director for the club, heads up our scouting department, and Kurt has done a fantastic job in building out that department. And even before the ownership acquisition, we operate with within our scouting network of kind of compiling all that information into a centralized database. And so now with adding in the dynamic of being in this global ecosystem of the David Blitzer clubs, the answer is yes. We're constantly having conversations and getting information from our peers at the respective clubs on kind of players in form, players available, players coming on a contract, players that could make sense in the loan. So yes, that database has both expanded, but also, I would say, how do you phrase it? But also, highlighted this area within our ecosystem because, of course, there's a more linear connection with all of those clubs and more willingness to, look to collaborate again for the rising tide to raise all boats. We've seen a great example of that initially earlier this year with Sergio Cordova. And, in the initial meetings with Mr. Blitzer and his team upon the solidification of his acquisition, that was the name that came up right away from both sides. A player we were excited about, and a player they thought on their side might make sense for us as well. So we're already reaping, bearing the fruit from this relationship, and I think that that is hopefully going to continue and will continue. So, what positions are we searching for currently within the office? Yeah, no, I think, look, I would love to hear your guys' opinion on what positions we should be searching for. But I will say, look, like I said earlier, we're always evaluating the roster, continually throughout the year and talking about and looking at ways in which we need to and can potentially strengthen it. I think the obvious one is a central midfielder. And then, look, I think while the addition of Jefferson, has really solidified our attack, with some unfortunate injuries, there may be the potential to add in the attack as well. But I will say, it's not necessary because, in kind of the midst of an injury crisis, if you want to label it that, there's also opportunity for other players as well. And, throughout the course of a season, you really are going to need significant contribution, not just from the top end of your roster, but from the entirety of your roster as well. And so I think there's a lot of opportunity here ahead for a lot of players to step up, similarly to a player like Jasper Lofelson has done earlier this year and solidify themselves and play themselves into a different role. So look, I think to answer your question, the central midfielder is of course an obvious one with the departure of Everton Luis and and then potentially elsewhere as well.
Mm-hmm. And then also to answer your question really quick that you said at the beginning, we've on this show have talked especially about a 6 and a left back. Those are the two positions that we've talked about a lot, but then also there are a lot of fans talking about a 9. So if you want to take that back to your meetings, go for it. Specifically about the roster, there's some confusion with the fans on how it's working out because it's listed online that we have like 30, 33, 34, something like that players on the roster, but there's a roster limit in MLS of 30. So how do you guys make that work? And if you can just get a little clarity in that realm.
Yeah, no, that's and look, Elliot is the capologist. He's definitely the ultimate authority on the management of the salary cap. I will say he's very talented in that regard, and many others. But look, I think that really highlights what our club is about. And again, we're a development club, and so the fact that we have, like you said, players above the roster limit of 30 is actually permissible within MLS rules. The players above that, or some players above that, are just off roster currently. And so when that happens, it's essentially, at kind of an owner's discretion to have players in the category. So again, players within our development pipeline who are not currently ready to play for the first team right now, but are under contract with the first team right now. So it's kind of a means to have those players under contract as they continue to develop. And as things evolve, of course, we have the ability to, at the appropriate times, make the necessary activations for those players.
Okay, so then I guess a clarification question on that. So like, for example, a player maybe like Jude Wellings, who is 15, is his first year on contract, and he's playing basically with the academy and occasionally with the Monarchs. A player like that would be someone that you have on contract but isn't on the roster.
Correct. Jude is a good example and is in that category. Correct.
And so in that case, would it be like they're almost like on loan to the Monarchs, or is it a little bit different than that?
No, exactly. Yeah, that's a good way to put it, because they are on loan for the Monarchs, so those players are active on the Monarchs roster within MLS Next Pro, and so that's kind of the mechanism in which we're able to do that.
What can you comment at all, or what do you have on players coming in? We talked about players going out, players coming in. We do have those couple of roster spots open, and so what do you think that obviously nothing's certain unless it is, and you just can't say it yet. But what'll that be looking like in this window?
Yeah, I think look, I think in this window, how do I phrase this? I think our front office, our staff is certainly looking for the right opportunity. And if it presents itself within this window, then I expect us to strike on that opportunity. Like I said, we're always looking at the appropriate ways and the appropriate timing of roster movement, and improving the overall roster of the first team. But I think it would be foolish of me to say anything definitively, or of course to reference any position or player, just because as I've learned in this position, nothing is certain until the player is here and in market. Things change very fast in the global in the global football game. And again, I think most important to highlight, our ownership group is aggressive from the standpoint of they want to move the team forward in their desired direction. And so we are constantly looking and evaluating and determining if and when the right place and time and player to add to the roster.
You're a guy who's been here with this club for many, many years now. With the arrival of new ownership, with the arrival of John Kimball, and just all the changes that have happened to the club over the last year, how has the club evolved and how's the club changed in your eyes?
Yeah, that's a really interesting and big question, because certainly in my time since I arrived in 2008, the club is the same club, but it's a different club. The league, the game here in this country has grown significantly, and with it, Real Salt Lake has had to grow and evolve as well. And we don't need to get into the finer details of all those years, but I think in respect to new ownership and new leadership, in the form of John Kimball, our president, I think this is going to be a very, how do I phrase this? This is going to be a very significant and very positive era for Real Salt Lake. I can say that definitively and without hesitation, that the club is in good hands. And I think it's really, there's a story that Mr. Blitzer told the first time I had the privilege of meeting him, and the first time he met with the entirety of our workforce. And I think it really encompasses the sentiment in which he purchased Real Salt Lake with Ryan Smith, but also the sentiment behind the reasons he's purchased all the clubs that he has purchased around the world. And so he grew up playing soccer and played in high school, but never at a higher enough level to have professional aspirations. But when he was managing his first fund, he had to move over to London, England. And his first day there, he arrived in his flat with his wife, who was pregnant with their first child at the time. And he went out to buy milk. And he went out into the streets, and it was a sea of blue. And he didn't quite understand why at first. And then as he had a couple conversations, he realized there was a Chelsea FC match that day. And so then, 5-6 hours later, he returned home. And that was after going to the local pub with the supporters, going to the match, and just, immersing himself in that culture, because it's something that he genuinely loves. And of course, upon getting back, he said, his wife said, "Where the heck have you been? You went out for milk and you've been gone for half a day." But look, Mr. Blitzer, he loves the game. He loves football, and he's doing this for all the right reasons. So I think that's, a really powerful story and sentiment on kind of what is guiding our club forward. And you combine that with Ryan Smith, a local entrepreneur who has a deep ties to this community and understands the weight in driving this club forward in a way that it should be a legacy for the community. And that's the most important thing for him. And look, the two combined is really a dream ownership team. And of course, all that funnels through through John Kimball, our president, who handles the day-to-day management of all of our staff. And John really, embodies who those two owners are as well. He was, I believe, the first employee for Real Salt Lake. And, he's seen us at our highest points and seen us at some very low points as well. And so again, I think our leadership team, our ownership group, has purchased Real Salt Lake for all the right reasons. And, they're going to operate it in a manner worthy of those sentiments, and also worthy of all the people who love this club in our community. And so look, as someone who's been here for 15 years, and I certainly am a staff member, but also someone who cares about RSL deeply, and the club is certainly a part of me. This is going to be undoubtedly, in my mind, a golden era for Real Salt Lake.
We're just explaining, Tony, that because we obviously have newer fans that are listening to our podcast and stuff, to let people know who you are. So I said that you've been a person of just one club. You started here, you finished your career here, and that's why you care so much about this team. And so I just wanted to mention that for the viewers.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And look, I appreciate, you guys as well, and the obvious, care and emotion, that you have for Real Salt Lake. It's the organization, the club, the game is meaningless without the love of the fans. And, we certainly have that connection and that shared love. And I appreciate all you guys do for supporting RSL.
We got to bring Colombian players here. It's the only time we won a trophy and made it to the final of the MLS, and the second time. We Colombian players.
That's true. That's you're speaking a lot of truth. I got to tell Elliot.
Yeah, I told Elliot before, but he doesn't listen to me. Is there any upgrades to the stadium coming up for next year that you could mention or share with the supporters?
Stadium upgrades. Yeah, look, I think we should commend, or I would like to commend, all the great work that's gone into the stadium so far. I think, the graffiti, the signage, the stadium has never looked better. I don't know exactly the details of what updates are to come, but I know there are updates to come, and to varying degrees of significance. So I will say the upgrades to Rio Tinto Stadium we're not done yet.